Oh man, Cyberpunk 2077. What a messy launch that was. And there's so much bullshit going around about the game too. Memes, the reviews, the hot takes. They're all over the place, from 10 out of 10 masterpiece to 0 out of 10 worse than cancer. It's hard to get a real read on the game. I mean, what is this game? Well, hell, I own the game. I got nothing better to do. Well, let me tell you. What are my credentials? I got none. Never made a video like this before. But what the hell, I figure. Why not? So first, before anything else, quick take. Should you buy this game right now as of the making of this video? Nah, not really. The game is in a pretty shitty place, to be honest, especially if you're playing on consoles. The smart thing to do is wait. Wait and see if things have improved in a few months. But right now, nah, don't buy the game. There you go. Review done. But obviously you want to know more than that. I mean, why would you want to buy this game? Is it something you'd even like? Well, there's a lot of mixed information floating around about this, including a good number of people who are pissed because they feel CD Projekt lied to them about what's actually in the game. So, for this video, I'll only be talking about what's actually in the game, right now, what you'll be playing if you choose to buy it. I'm also not going to bother talking about bugs much because, honestly, on PC, they're annoying, but it's not that bad, and CD Projekt have a good reputation for patching their games. No, this video is more about what the game is and isn't, with a bit of my own personal perspective thrown in for good measure. Sound good? Cool. Let's start with what this game isn't. First of all, you might have seen clips like this one. Horrible civilian AI, cops spawning out of nowhere, it's a mess. But with that said, it's kinda hard to say, but if this sort of mess is a big deal to you, this might not be your kinda game. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, maybe you're the type that really likes emergent gameplay, the kind of gameplay that's entirely unscripted and player-driven. Spontaneous excitement, random fun. No, you're not really gonna find it here. Like, CD Projekt are probably going to patch the world AI some. It's pretty obvious playing the game right now that there's meant to be more to it. But at the same time, it's clearly not the point of the game. This isn't a dynamic world. In fact, quite the opposite. It's very static. The only time things change is through the story, nowhere else. Maybe future patches or expansions might change that, but if they do, I doubt it'll be anytime soon. Doesn't matter whether that's how the game was advertised or not, doesn't matter that that's how you want to play it. The simple, cold, hard fact truth is that that's not what this game is about. It's not Grand Theft Cyberpunk, that's what I'm saying. You're not going to get that here. But maybe you're the type that likes to explore, run around the map getting collectibles, playing mini games, that kind of thing. Well, Night City is gorgeous. You can see for yourself right now. Holy crap, this game looks good. That said, you're not going to get that here either. There are no real minigames or collectibles outside the story. Cyberpunk's open world is kinda in the same vein as games like Mafia 1 or L.A. Noire. The world is there to help the story, it's great to look at, and I love wandering around and taking in all the little details. But it's not a main part of the gameplay, if that makes any sense. It's more of just like a backdrop. So, if it's none of these things, what is Cyberpunk 2077? Well, to get into that, I'm going to touch on the story first, because a lot can be said about what type of game you're playing based on the game's player character. This is especially true in RPG. On one end of the scale, you've got stuff like Final Fantasy with a pre-existing protagonist and a mostly linear story. Then on the other, you've got games like Skyrim, with a self-insert protagonist and a pretty open story. That is to say, the protagonist doesn't really have any personality. It's something you've got to make for yourself, and only if you want to. Then in the middle, you've got games like Mass Effect, where there's a pre-made protagonist, but they're pretty malleable. Same with the story. Where does Cyberpunk fit in? Well, right about here. What does that mean? Well, it means that if you wanted to insert yourself into the story, play as yourself or a character of your own making in this crazy cyberpunk world, you can't do that. Instead, you play as V, and V is a character that exists in this world. You're advancing V's story, not yours. And while V is pretty malleable, they are a defined character in this world, surprisingly so in fact. And here's where we get to what exactly Cyberpunk 2077 is, and we'll start with a mild spoiler. Why? Because I want to highlight what sort of story this game has and what sort of character V is. This takes place pretty early in the game, and I've edited things to keep spoilers minimal, but still, If you want to go into this game completely blind, there's a timestamp on the screen to skip to. Ready? Cool.
V, it's important you get all this.
You'll fix me up, right, Vic?
If I could, I would, V. Believe me. But it's way beyond what I know how to do.
You're the best of the best, Vic. Why can't you help me? You've always come through for me. If there's nothing you can do to help me, then what the hell do I do? Tell me, please. Vic.
I wish I knew, kid. Misty?
You're asking too much from an old-timer like Vic. Come on, V. Let's get you home.
Well, that was, I highlighted that scene because cyberpunk stories, as a genre, tend to be about big government conspiracies and corporate lies mixed with lots of symbolism and a fair bit of, thoughtful melancholy. Think Snow Crash, Blade Runner, Ghost in the Shell, etc. This game does all that, and it even does it pretty well. Lots of twists and turns, some branching story paths, all the usual stuff. But personally, what stood out to me were the characters, and that's including V. It's a surprisingly personal story, and this is obviously super subjective. But I love that, and I think it was really well done here. Side note, incidentally, the voice acting in this game is just top-notch. I genuinely don't get where anyone who would complain about the voice acting is coming from. Dialogue is really good too. It's cheesy sometimes, yeah, but Cyberpunk is kinda cheesy, and as a fan of the genre, this is like primo, top-notch Cyberpunk cheese. Anyway, the point I'm getting at here is that this is mostly a linear story told from the perspective of a character that already exists in this world. You can change some things. V is more valuable than, say, Geralt of Rivia, but even then, only so much. You can change V's origin, for example, but mostly that just changes a few relationships and adds some dialogue options every now and then. Also, like in games such as Fallout, you'll get some dialogue options that pop up based on your stats, which origin story you picked, and some of your previous decisions. Even so, however, sometimes it can feel like you're not getting as many dialogue options as maybe you should, but then it's also kinda hard to say since a lot of the time you can't see what other dialogue options you might have gotten if, for example, you'd picked a different origin story. Still, I liked it, and the dialogue itself is, as mentioned, sharp and well acted. In regards to the story, you'll be making some big decisions, choices with consequences, but only when the developers let you. This is a roller coaster ride, and it's one hell of a ride, but there's no sandbox storytelling here. So a lot of how much you enjoy this game will depend on how much you like the story being told to you, rather than any story you are making for yourself. Okay, so I've talked a lot now about the story and things that are super subjective. How about the gameplay? Well, it's pretty good. CD Projekt's obvious inspirations for games like Deus Ex or Dishonored, games where you're given a goal and it's up to you to use the tools you've got to accomplish that goal, with each mission kinda set up like a standalone level in a more typical game. Do you want to be stealthy? Either ghosting your enemies or going all Predator on them? Go for it. Do you want to be a cool cyber hacker? Yeah, you can totally do that. Do you want to slice people up with your arm knives or go in all guns ablaze? That's up to you. Some missions, especially the story ones, are a bit more linear, but mostly the game just gives you a bunch of gadgets, sets up an arena, and tells you to do a thing, not how to do it. As for the shooting itself, I was a bit iffy on it early on. I played on hard and the enemies at the start can be a bit bullet spongy, but I did genuinely find that as the game went on and I leveled up my skills, unlocked new abilities, got new weapons and augmentations, all while new enemy types were being introduced, it got good. It feels nice. The shooting's obviously not as sharp as a dedicated FPS game, but for an RPG, that's good. I mean, it feels better than any other recent FPS RPG I've played, and as the game goes on you get so many cool toys and gizmo to play with that the only way it could really get boring is if you let it. Alright, so what else is there to talk about? We've gone over gameplay and story, what this game is and isn't. So quest structure in the game is broken up into 3 types. The main jobs, side jobs, and gigs. Main jobs are the main story, obviously, and side jobs are pretty self-explanatory and pretty diverse. There's racing side jobs, collection ones, action, etc., and most lead to some kind of side story with a few branching choices and unique character moments. Exactly what you'd expect. Gigs, though, are mostly just like little diversions. A guy that needs to be eliminated, an item stolen, that kind of thing. Some of them have a little bit of story, and a few can change based on how you approach them, but mostly they're like this game's equivalent to a random monster attack. And as such, they can get repetitive. They are also pretty much entirely optional though, so if you want to ignore them, you can. I mentioned racing. How's that in this game? Meh? This is another thing that's probably going to change with patches, but as of this video, the car controls are, You ever play Grand Theft Auto 4? The cars there feel kinda heavy and sluggish, plus they take forever to stop. Well, it feels like that here too. Movement on foot is good, especially once you get some augments, like the ability to jump crazy high. That's good, but driving? Not so much. Could be worse, could definitely be better. Like I said, I kinda expect this to change with patches though. How about hacking? How does that work? Well, in-game you've got your normal view and you've got the augmented view, which scans the environment and any enemies nearby. From this view, you can do things like hack cameras and use equipable hacking abilities on enemies to do things from make them go blind to their weapons malfunction or just straight up do damage to them. There's also breaching, which is a type of hacking that usually involves a little minigame. The game is mostly just like a quick little puzzle. Again, as you progress it becomes easier. It's fine, it's not really interesting, but it's also super quick, so whatever. Breaching can deliver some more long-term effects, like introducing a virus to connected enemies that makes them take more damage over time, and it's also used in terminals to get resources based on how well you solved the little puzzle thing. Think treasure chests. Overall, the breaching minigame, well, it ain't great, but it's quick, so... Hacking as a whole, though, gives you lots of options, and it can be fun to play around with. I like it. It's a cool addition. On the subject of minigames, there are a few times the gameplay is mixed up. Your usual turret sections, linear car chases, that kind of thing. Sometimes the scanner view I just brought up will be used for detective-style stuff. Think Witcher 3's Witcher Vision or Batman's Detective Vision or whatever it was called. Things like that. There are also other times the gameplay is mixed up with BDs, or brain dances as they're called. And they're neat, but they're also purely a story thing and only pop up a handful of times. I don't want to reveal too much here since I don't want to go into spoiler territory again, but it's cool, there's more to do than just shoot people and talk. Loot works kinda like a looter shooter game. Think Borderlands, though not that extreme. Weapons and gear have a rarity level, and different randomized stats as well. Some weapons can do fire damage, for example, alongside any other quirk that type of weapon might get. And clothes work pretty much the same stat-wise. I think most of the clothes look setting appropriate, but you can definitely get some of that classic RPG clown armor look going if you're picking purely by stats. You can also use crafting to enhance some gear alongside making new stuff. So if you really like the look of a hat you picked up, for example, you can enhance it to keep it respectable stat-wise till you find a better one that suits your style. And on the subject of weapon quirks, there are guns that can do different things like a charged shot to shoot through walls, which is super cool with sniper rifles, and shoot around corners, neat things like that. Overall, the loot is fine, definitely an improvement over their previous game, Witcher 3. Oh, music is great. Both the voiced in-universe music and the background stuff. Fantastic soundtrack, you'll get nothing but praise from me there. How about the graphics? Well, I mean, you've been watching the game in the background this entire time. You can decide for yourself whether you think it looks good or not. The game's visuals scale pretty well, so even on lower settings it looks damn good on PC. Performance ain't great, but like bugs, I expect that to change with patches, so I'm not going to get too into that in this video. Besides, there are plenty of people who can do that and will do it way better than I ever could. As for consoles, well, as the making of this video, we'll just have to wait and see. The PS4 and Xbox One do not look great right now, and I definitely wouldn't recommend them. But again, we'll just have to wait and see if that can be fixed, or how the game will look when it's optimized for the next-gen consoles. It should also be mentioned that the game is almost entirely first-person. You can choose to drive in third, as you've seen in the background, but otherwise it's like 99% first-person, which, when it was first announced, I honestly didn't like. I mean, I love a good cinematic. I love to watch my characters do cool things, sue me. But having played Cyberpunk 2077, I get it. I get why they decided on that, and it works. Still, worth pointing out. What else is there? AI. It's fine for the missions. In the open world, it's basically non-existent, like that clip I showed earlier, but for the story missions, it's fine, I guess. Don't expect the AI to do much surprising, but it works, mostly. Hackers will be annoying jerks and hide behind cover far away, snipers will try to keep their distance, enemies will throw grenades to flush you out of cover. They don't really seem to work together, unfortunately, but I've definitely seen a lot worse out there, so whatever. And, that's about it. Can't really think of anything else worth talking about, not without making this a 2-hour-long video essay anyway. The character models look really nice, the world is huge, and visually diverse too. There's tons of things to see. Photo mode is there, it's kinda fun. Yeah, that's about it. So, summary time. It's a great big, gorgeous open world, but that world mostly serves as a way to connect the mission and story hubs, and that's where you'll be spending most of your time. The gameplay is solid, and you get fun tools to play with, but you are expected to play where and when the game wants you to. Story is mostly linear, save for some branching paths, but it's a good story with excellent characters. V is not very malleable, but they are likable, and after playing through their perspective in moments like the spoiler I showed earlier, I do find them very sympathetic. Presentation is, bugs and performance aside, since again that's not the point of this video, absolutely fantastic. This is a gorgeous looking, great sounding game. Whether you'd actually enjoy it or not, though, is up to you. Actually, you know what? Like I said earlier, this game, it's a roller coaster, and it's one I look forward to getting better with time and riding again and again. But if you don't like roller coasters, well, now you know.